having me here. This is an amazing club, I have to say. Your resources here and the speakers you've had in the past and everything is very cohesive, and I just think you're very lucky to have a club like this. And I would have loved to have had a club like this in Arizona. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about my background, and then I want to jump right into kind of the main part of my speech and my talk, which is going to be kind of small-scale sideliner business. And then I'll save questions for the end. So Donna, you make sure that you cut me off at a certain time so we have lots of time for questions. So a little bit about me. My name is Emily Brown. I used to own the AZ Queen Bee beekeeping and honey company. So I have my history is I began beekeeping about 24 years ago. So I was that little kid that had to be a beekeeper, and so I started when I was a teenager. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I'm a former American honey queen. I traveled all around the country for a year talking to schools and doing TV interviews, all basically to bring up the honey industry, celebrate honey, and bring awareness to honey and beekeeping. I got my MBA from ASU. As I said, I moved out to Arizona, and I really, really wanted to have my own business. And they say, if you're really passionate about something, that should be your business. So I decided I was going to give it a try. So I started AZ Queen Bee, and I started with bee removal and honey products. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the things that I did with that company. I was a beekeeper for Butterfly Wonderland and the Boulders Resort out in Scottsdale, and that was a really big coup. Those were really big companies that really kind of set me apart from the other beekeepers. And it was a wonderful opportunity. I helped organize Arizona's first honey festival. They had never had that before. It was really, really well received. People loved it. I won a Good Food Awards in 2015, which kind of set me apart in the food industry and brought a lot of opportunities my way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think that's something you should all know about and maybe want to try and enter at some point. I've been on the board of directors for the American Beekeeping Federation for the last 3 years. I love the American Beekeeping Federation. I have some information on that later that I'd like you to have and learn about. And I just recently sold this business in Arizona, and I moved to the state of Maryland. So this is a whole new adventure for me, and I'm very excited about it. So I thought it was wonderful to be able to sell that business, and so I'd like to share some of my recommendations for building a business so that if you were so inclined, you could do something similar, or just even get one key little fact or point that you want to try with your own business. So it all started with a story. So these are just some pictures of when I was younger. Yes, that's my high school senior photo. So you don't really see that too often. But this is literally like 1998, and that's me. I was super excited to be a beekeeper. And so basically, I had always wanted to be a beekeeper, and finally, my parents said, okay, we have to let her try this. This has been her dream forever. So I finally started beekeeping. I read a lot of books. You have to remember, this is before the internet. This is before, social media. So I basically showed up at the club, and I'm the only young girl, and I'm kind of, really asking a lot of questions. So I found a mentor, which I love how you all like to mentor as well. My mentor was key to my success. I read a lot of books, but I was also very intrigued with bees, and I was going to make sure that this was successful. So I started with 2 packages of bees, and I kind of worked my way through my whole little adventure. So this is just a picture of me. I'm building my first hive, and then the second picture, I was super excited. I had collected my first swarm from my own yard, of course. But yeah, so it was just kind of just all through trial and error. So the next little thing that came my way was the club I was in had never had a honey queen from our county. And I wasn't really a honey queen girl. That's not really why I got into beekeeping. But when you think about things that present opportunities for growth and out of your comfort zone, then you should try and tackle that. And I knew it was going to be a great way to meet the beekeepers, travel the state of Pennsylvania. So I said, sure, I would like to do that, and I will give it a try. So I traveled the state of Pennsylvania, speaking at their farm shows, every state fair, every convention, and learning more about the industry as I went, because I was not just a daughter of a beekeeper. Nobody in my family was a beekeeper. I had to learn this all on my own, and I wanted to learn from all of these other amazing beekeepers. So if they had an event, I was there, and I was asking questions the whole time, and I was selling their honey, but at least I was learning along the way. So I was the honey queen for Pennsylvania for a year. The American Beekeeping Federation offers they have a national honey queen program, which I didn't know about, but you can be the American Honey Queen or the Princess if you win. And so I was the American Honey Queen for 1997, and then I traveled all around the country for a year promoting the beekeeping and honey industry, which was another great opportunity to get out of my comfort zone and talk about this amazing industry and promote it the best I could, which also gives a young person skills such as, speaking on live TV and, small little soundbite segments, learning how to speak succinctly and get to the point and hold people's attention. So all of it was just kind of a really nice little opportunity to help, promote the industry, but also learn and grow myself. So this is just American Honey Queen. I was traveling around. When the opportunity presented itself to do a bee beard, I said absolutely. So I'm pretty sure I was the first honey queen that ever wanted to do that. And since then, they've all done one. So it's it was a great little experience. I loved it. So, and as Donna said, it was my anniversary, so obviously I had honey at my wedding. So it says August 31st, 2002, Emily and Andrew say, honey, I do. So I thought that was kind of cute. I had to throw it in there. Yeah. So real quickly, I'm going to talk a little bit about desert beekeeping because it is quite different than other parts of the country. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about the beekeeping because you have great beekeepers here you can learn from, and I want to get a little bit more to the business side of it. So, but for desert beekeeping, you have a similar environment, very hot. Your nectar flow is a little bit longer. So in Arizona, I had to figure out. So I left Pennsylvania, Maryland area after college, went to Arizona, and was convinced that there was no way you could have bees in Arizona. It's too hot, there's no plants here, there's no nectar, but I figured out pretty quickly there was a lot of bees in Arizona, and there's not that many beekeepers, and the nectar flow is long, and it was really a good nectar flow, and so I got into beekeeping after I had my first 2 children. I jumped back into beekeeping, and I kind of figured it out. Now, Arizona has Africanized bees, which I don't think you have to deal too much with that here, but that was a huge part of beekeeping in Arizona, which was very difficult and can be very stressful, and it's a whole different way of beekeeping. So I really had to adapt, change my gear. Nothing I had was going to work with the Africanized bees, so I completely rebooted my whole way of beekeeping and how I looked at things, and then I just went with what that natural environment gave me. And you can be very successful in that environment, but boy, you gotta want it. It's a tough environment to work in, and very, very difficult bees. So pollen was plentiful. I had pollen traps on the hives, beautiful pollen, and the land was the hardest part in Arizona. Land is really hard to find, and it's very, people don't live on 4-acre properties. They all have like tiny little 1/4-acre patches here and there. And I was living more in the city, and so I would try and figure out these land plots I could get to within a reasonable amount of time and still have these bees sheltered from most of the communities, because it was very difficult to keep the hives European, and eventually they would become Africanized. There was a lot to deal with. The hot temperatures, you're talking well over 100 degrees many months out of the year, and even reaching 118 or higher, and you're in a suit. So it's really, really, you had to plan really well to be in that suit for hours when you're working bees, check underneath the hives for rattlesnakes, black widows, that sort of thing. So it was a really interesting environment, and I am very happy to have a little break from it, though, because because it was quite difficult. So this brings me to why I want to talk to you today is just some keys to maybe being successful if you wanted to do something, bring your business up to maybe more of a sideliner, small scale sideliner or full bore sideliner. Because as every hobbyist kind of dreams of what could be the next level. How do I do that? What does that look like? And what does that look like for me? What works in my comfort zone with the skills that I already have? So some of the niches that I personally like, and I see a lot of sideliners do really well, is obviously you can sell your products. Selling your products is an easy way, but some other options would be, hive management. So, and I'll go through these in a little bit more detail, each one of these in the coming slides. But there's a lot of paid hive management through schools, science centers, airports, golf courses, and resorts. So if you can kind of work that angle, that can be a very, very profitable line of revenue for your business. So, and then obviously bee removals and selling of nukes and queens, you can certainly get into that realm. Bee removals was kind of my bread and butter out in Arizona. So the feral colonies of bees were mainly Africanized. They'd swarm up 10 times a year, and they would inundate every community. So I basically picked the 20-mile radius from where I lived, and just phone would ring off the hook all day long after I got my business going, because the bees were inundating people's, their homes, their garages, everything. So I kind of made that a pretty big part of my business because it was just, that was what the natural environment was giving me. So, and I did not sell a whole lot of nukes and queens until later on. But the other thing I did and I really loved is the school presentations and giving classes. So, and I think that if you are a people person and you love to educate and you know what you're doing, the school presentations are wonderful, and they, schools are everywhere. Every school loves to have a good presenter, especially when it's bees and honey, and everybody talks about that so much lately. So I had a really good time getting into that. So the some basic business principles, if you're going to try and build your business, you kind of have to think about some of the building blocks, because you can't just jump in and then not be prepared. You don't want to do that. So some of the things that you might have to consider is obviously you need a trade name, kind of a good trade name, and you could then establish yourself as an LLC as a minimum. You get a federal EIN number, and you can use that to set up your bank account under your trade name, and you want to run everything through that bank account. And then other things you need are the proper licenses. In Arizona, I had to have, believe it or not, and I don't know what the rules are here, to sell honey with a label on the jar, I had to have an inspected honey house, or go to like a business where I would extract all of my honey at, so I use a catering business, for example, extract all my honey at the catering business and be inspected twice a year. My vehicle was inspected, and the FDA inspected my labels that went on the jar. So I thought that was fairly intense, and not all areas have to do that. But if your area, if that's what they command, you gotta do that. So, so the other things that I wanted to make sure I was really covered for was just general liability insurance. And this is important because this is now, you're putting yourself out there. When you start putting a label on honey and you're selling to people, or you're taking people out to your hives, or you're doing a bee removal, or you're accepting payment, you have to really make sure you're covered. You do not want to be caught in a litigious situation, all because you were not properly insured. And so I made sure I had product liability coverage. I made sure I was covered for every bee removal I was doing. I didn't take a lot of people out with me because I didn't really like that idea that some of these situations were really dangerous. But you really, really don't want to underestimate things that could go wrong, and things even with your products that people could say went wrong with them and didn't actually happen. You really just want to make sure you have plenty of liability insurance. Even get an umbrella policy if you have to. You can get one of those easily. And we're not talking thousands and thousands of dollars here. This is just something that is part of a business, and you're just going to have to shop around and get the right amount of liability for you. And a lot of places will not accept or hire you for bee removals, say on a hotel's property, a resort's property, or an HOA, if you can't list them as an additional insured on your insurance policy. So I was easily able to convey that to a lot of people that wanted to hire me. Hey look, here's my insurance limits, I can list you as an additional insured, I can have that document over to you in 3 hours. And I can do that bee removal today. I mean, you gotta be able to jump. When people want a bee removal and they're really upset about it, they think the bees are Africanized and time is of the essence, you wanna make sure you can make it so easy for them to hire you and accept your rate and just get that job going. You don't wanna miss it because you weren't properly insured, you were trying to stay under the radar. None of that's gonna work. You wanna be like the go-to person for these places so they can make sure that they wanna hire you and that you're gonna do a good job and they're insured and you're insured and everybody's happy. So the other thing I did was I did retain an attorney for liability agreements. So I got into some situations with hotels and resorts and schools and science centers, and that is not something that I take lightly when you're having, hives on people's properties where tons of community members are walking onto that property and could have access to the hives. You're not there all the time to monitor them, and you don't really want to have any issues or have any liability come back on you. So I did hire an attorney just to write the contracts, the agreements, to go over the documents that we have, just so I felt more protected. And then I also used an attorney later on. Somebody had copied my business name and started a business very, very similar to mine, which was really not at all, did not make me happy at all. And obviously I was getting random phone calls from somebody who had done a job with a similar name. And your only course of action in this case is to basically shut down someone like that and make them change their entire business name, their model, their website, their Facebook page, is to go to an attorney, present all the facts, and make sure that they write a very strong letter, and they will change their name very quickly, especially if you have the credentials, you have the history, and you can state all the business that you've been doing in the past few years and who you've been working for and why this is an important aspect of your business to not have somebody have a similar name. So if you think about some of those things, you don't want to put all of this time into building this brand and have somebody just copy it just enough that it's confusing. That is a terrible thing to do to somebody that's put their heart and soul into a business, and you're just going to kind of replicate it and make something really similar and make it really confusing for all the people in your area. So that's just something to think about. You don't have to have an attorney, but I think you could be in that situation at some point. So the biggest thing I like to say is branding. Branding is so important in our society. People love a good brand, they love a good logo, they like to be able to get behind a tagline. So I didn't really have a great tagline in Arizona, but I did have this one line I used on my t-shirts and certain things, and it was like, who's your beekeeper? Because in Arizona, it was such a big deal. These the bee swarms were coming through the valley all the time. And everybody on every Facebook page and website at certain points of the year would say, who's your beekeeper? Who do you have? And a lot of times, through social media, they'd say, AZ Queen Bee, call her, she'll do the bee removal. And if you can kind of, develop something that's catchy, people love a good catchy tagline. And I'm sure you can come up with that. But basically you need a good logo, a brand, something that you're going to brand everything with and you're going to stick with it. This is your identity with your business. So, and then the next thing is define your niche. Not everybody has the same niche or wants the same things. There's so many different entities to beekeeping, and certain people they're just into the queen rearing, that's their bread and butter. They're staying in that world, which is great, that's what they're good at. I wasn't good at that. I'm not going to go there. I let somebody else do that. So other people, they want to do more of the bee removals, and some people are doing just school presentations. You kind of want to define your niche and basically your base. Who are you catering to? I always catered to women. I just felt like women were the buyers. They were the ones that supported my business. They were the ones calling to get the live bee removals. They were the ones that really cared. They were the ones always coming to me for, holiday gifts and this and that. And so I made sure that my business was fairly, that was my niche. I was going to cater to, women and also very high-end retail resorts. So whatever the retail resorts commanded, that was who I was focusing on. And I'll kind of get back to that in a little bit. So I would establish a website. Websites are really, really cheap and easy to make. You don't have to have anything fancy. I had a free website, and I just had a couple little landing pages, nothing fancy, and it worked perfectly. And people can contact you through that website if you want them to, but this day and age, it's almost less about websites and more about social media. So if you can maybe have a landing page that just, you want to establish yourself as legit. You don't want people to be like, I can't find a website on this company, they don't have any social media pages, who are they? So this was one of the TV interviews I did early on. So this was just an example of this TV guy. He loved talking about bees and honey. He wanted to be in the full suit. He wanted that suit with the gloves, and he was really into it. And oftentimes that 30-second to 60-second interview would get pushed to 2 or 3 minutes, because they'd be like, and we'll be back with more. And they do a lot more if you have really brought all of the equipment and it's going really well and people are responding, and so it really can work out well. So this particular so I always, and I'll show you a couple more pictures. I got really lucky with this design. So Crate & Barrel came out with these stackable wine racks a couple years ago. I literally stalked the trucks when they came to the store because I was like, I will never find this again. This is going to be gorgeous. So these are little tiny wine racks that fit together, and you can build all these different configurations. I've never seen it again, and I've tried to find more. But I bought 10 because I knew that this is perfect to kind of collapse and take to a TV interview, or to put on a market stand, or to put in an event, and it just works out really nicely. So you have a little bit more depth in a design, and the TV studios love this because you can put your products, you can put all kinds of different things that then they can grab and talk about and walk around with, and you have your observation hive, you have your smoker equipment. So, and you always want to kind of promote yourself too. You're on TV, and you need to be promoting yourself. That's the reason why you're there. A lot of times, you forget to mention your business. You forget to even talk about, sometimes what you're really there to talk about. I was always promoting this home and landscape show, and I never mentioned myself. So finally, I was like, I'm going to put my poster up here. I got these shirts designed that are dry fit and has my logo on the front and a big logo on the back. And that way, you're kind of branding. You're kind of all over the place. So if this ends up on the magazine for the show, then you have your name, you have your picture, you have your brand, you have your logo. Everything's going to be represented. So this was just another TV interview. I brought all these plants because I wanted to show people that these are all the plants, nectar-producing plants in the area, and then this was a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables, all pollinated by honeybees, and I have honeycomb, and I have the live bees, and then I always have the show tickets, whatever I'm promoting up front. But just an example, because if you start doing a lot of TV interviews for the same TV studios, they want something new. So I got to the point where I was doing so many TV interviews, they were like, it's got to be something new, what do you have for me? So then I had to get a little bit more creative. So then I would bring in, a huge plethora of fruits and vegetables, or all the plants. So this is one of the honey queens I had in. She did a great job. So I always turn it over to the girls when they come in. I would host them every year for the last several years, and for a week, and usually get them at least 3 live TV interviews. And that was a great experience for them. They usually would come in a little, it was July, and they usually would come in a little nervous, but by the time they left, 3 live TV interviews, boom, 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 they were really, really more polished and a lot more confident, and they had some really great experience doing that. So the girls can be really, really easy to work with, and they'll really get some good TV interviews. This is just another one. So, just fruits and vegetables. You can have your wax products, whatever you're into. So this is just an example. I got called by a man who worked for John Deere, and he was going to be in town, and he is the writer for this magazine. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this, and he kept calling and calling. So finally, I was like, well, I guess I can meet you for like 30 minutes. He was really insistent, and he wanted to go see the beehives. Now, I really don't take people to see my hives because, A, some of them are really far out in the desert in private properties that I don't really like to take other people to. And then, B, it's kind of dangerous, I don't know this man, I've never met him, and now we're going to see these hives. So I reluctantly took this interview, and it turned out to be great. The writer / photographer, he did everything. He was really lovely, and then he was able to take some great photos, which I hadn't really had a whole lot of magazine pictures taken yet out there, and so this ended up being on the cover. So it was going to be a really little story somewhere inside this John Deere magazine, and then he sent me this, and it was just a really nice spread that he had put together with all kinds of cool pictures, and it was just kind of a really nice, lovely way to do it. But this is not how I normally look. So just to be clear, like this is, you know, I have an Ultra Breeze, thick Ultra Breeze suit that I typically wear, and it's dark and it's not very pretty. You can't even see through it. But this, because I knew it was a magazine, I pulled out this baby, which look how brand new that thing looks, and just to make it look a little bit nicer. It's not really, it's all about kind of making it look pretty for the, you know, magazines or the TV. So this was just an example. After that, we had the Super Bowl in Arizona, and somehow I got listed as one of the top 5 Arizona artisan foods to take home after the game. So my phone rang off the hook after that, and that was a really nice coup, because that's when I tell all the people that I supply honey to, the resorts, the really small little niche mom and pop shops that I go to that are a little bit more on the higher end scale. I said, you have to be ready. These people are calling and I'm sending them your way. So, you know, that was kind of a really nice little spread that I didn't expect. And then, you know, other things come with it. The American Bee Journal, that was going to be a really little story, and I think that came out last March. And then, you know, that was not even a picture I sent them. That got ripped off of Instagram. So you never know how things are going to work. But that was a really nice article in American Bee Journal. And then, you know, you just kind of, this was another little Scottsdale lifestyle spread that they had done. So I think if you take advantage of media, you know, it can be kind of nerve-wracking, but you can really get some great pictures out of it, some good, oopsie.
It's good.
Okay, I think I'm good. So, so you can get some great things out of it for you and your business too. So this was for a Scottsdale magazine. They sent out one of their photographers, and she was able to take these really cool photos that no other photographer had taken photos this great. Oopsie. Yeah, I think it's off.
Yeah, I don't know if you got backup batteries or not. You might
So
have
we'll
to.
see. I can
power
talk.
out there.
So this was just a really great example of pictures that she took that I would not have had, that then I could use for my website, my Facebook page, and they're just kind of, those were all pictures that if she gave them to me and somebody wanted to do an interview, I could send them these photos and they would print them in their magazine. Not every magazine has a great photographer to send out, so I was able to supply some of the smaller magazines with these stock photos, and then they could still do their job. They could still write a cool little article and interview me and get some of the facts and do something with it. So this is a Good Food Awards. If you haven't heard about this and you're really into honey and good food in general, then look them up. It's a really great program. It's out of San Francisco. The qualifications to enter your products are pretty stiff. I mean, you really have to be, you know, very, very good to your bees. They want really authentic, really people that are very, very not into chemicals. You're very easy on the bees. You're very easy on how you process your foods. So there's 14 categories: chocolate, beer, wine, charcuterie, oils, apple cider, and honey was added to this in 2015. So it's kind of amazing. Honey has its own category, so we should be really, really happy about that. It wasn't shoved in with like confectionaries or another category. They made it its own category because they felt so strongly that honey is such an artisanal food, that people love it, that there's all these different flavors and all these great producers, small producers. So this is very much catered toward the small producer that cares so much about their honey and their product. And so if you, they have a finalist, you enter, you can be a finalist, and then if you win, it's a really big deal. So I happened to win, and I went to San Francisco for this big event. It's a black tie event. It's a big deal. People from all over the country flew in for it, and everybody was on stage, and there's one speaker per category, and they really, really celebrate food and people who love food, and they're really, really caring about what goes in their body and what they're giving to other people. So it's a really cool program. I just think
That
it's
will work
wonderful.
now, I gotta bring, it's
Okay.
gonna kind of limit you to where you gotta go.
Okay, I'll stay right here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Emily, who was the speaker for honey?
I was.
Hi.
So it was just a really amazing experience, but I was very happy to be able to do that. It was like such an honor. So they have it every year. So the next Good Food Awards winners will be announced in January. So every January they announce the winners, and then they have this big event in San Francisco. Finalists are announced in October. So they give you this little sticker, so if you have an award-winning product, you get that little sticker, and then you get to put it on all your products. So I basically took that. I only won for honeycomb. I didn't win for honey, just a honeycomb. But I took that honeycomb and I took it to the resorts, and they were very, very excited and happy. They knew about the Good Food Awards. I was the only winner from the whole state ever for any category, and they were thrilled to have that in their boutique-y little shops. And so I had certain vendors I went to. I knew they'd be able to sell it and sell it well. So I took that right over to them, and that was how I did it. So that led to James Beard Taste America event. That's just another foodie event. So the other thing you could do is obviously you can sell your products. So I think the only thing with honey is you kind of need to differentiate yourself a little bit from other honey vendors. So you have to kind of figure out what your niche is going to be and what kind of quantities you're going to sell. So I ended up doing smaller size quantities of honey in glass. Mostly glass. I did do pound-sized squeezy jars because I love those too, and they're very family-friendly, and I believe in family-friendly and squeeze. But for the higher-end places that wanted glass, I did hexagonal glass jars, small quantities, higher prices. So I ended up selling the honey for $16 a pound, and the smaller jars would be $7 or $8. It was like $1 an ounce. That's kind of what I went with. And then I would set up wholesale accounts with certain vendors and sell it for a little bit less, but that was kind of how I went with the honey. So the other ideas you can do with the honey is you can also try infused honeys. People are really into that. I haven't gotten into infused honeys, but I do see people doing it. Cinnamon honey was a really big hit for me in Arizona. I would just do big batches of cinnamon honey once a year and promote it at this one event, and people would literally come in just for the cinnamon honey. And that was all they wanted. They wanted to stock up on their cinnamon honey because they knew I only did it one time a year, and that was what they wanted. And then you can do creamed honey. I think that's a really cool thing to get into. A lot of people do that and do it well. You convert, a little chest freezer, and you can do small quantities very easily. And cutcomb honey. So people love back to basics with just honeycomb, and you can do a lot with that. So the thing with cutcomb honey, I found that if 4x4 squares are too big, you can get these little boxes now. They're 4x2, and that was much better saleable item because it's smaller quantities. People can use that. They don't 4x4 kind of scares people. It's a commitment. It's a big piece of honeycomb. They're not quite sure what to do. So we went smaller, and it was much better. So some other things you can do, obviously you can take the wax and create things out of it. You can do people love lip balms and lotion bars and small candles. I really got into the candles for a while, but then I got out of candles because it takes a lot of time and it wasn't where the money was, and I was just not going to put that much time into something and not have it sell too well. So you kind of have to, I think it's good to try all types of different things, and whatever is not working for you, that's okay. Just maybe back out of that and not put so much time into it. So I think that some people are really into soaps and they can sell a ton of soaps and they do it really well, but maybe that's their bread and butter. Candles was not going to work for me too well. So wholesale accounts, if you can set up these wholesale accounts with unique boutique type of vendors, they will sell more of your honey for you, and you're going to have less on your plate. I kind of like to not have people come to me as a small scale sideliner personally to get any of my products. I would rather them go to these trendy little grocery stores, unique little boutique places, and get the honey there. So usually that's kind of a good way to set up. Plus, if you set up these accounts, you now have this account list. So if you ever want to get out of that business, or you ever want to sell off that piece of the business, you can take this account list with these great, kind of relationships that you personally built, and you can hand that off to somebody. You can sell that account list to another beekeeper, potentially, in the right circumstances. I've seen it done, and that is now considered, you can hand that off, and they can be the supplier to those trendy little unique boutique places that will sell the honey for a higher price for a smaller volume. Oh, so these are just some products that I did. This is nothing fancy. I printed a lot of this stuff myself. These are little lip balms, and you can buy all those little products. And you can do the little sealants where you vacuum seal the lip balms. You can do all that yourself to make it look a little bit nicer and more clean cut, but none of this is something you have to pay somebody else to do. You can do that. I like to do a little trio gift set. I did really well with these little tiny trios. It's just a little 6-ounce honey, a little lotion bar, and a lip balm all in a little burlap bag. I would sell those for $25, and people love those. Gift season is easy. They can take their little sachets, teachers, holidays, appreciation gifts, birthday gifts, mom's gifts. Those were kind of a great little seller. So if you can have some go-tos like that, I think it's a really fun thing. Yes?
In Florida, I don't know what the laws are for Arizona or Maryland, but in Florida, the lip balm and the other stuff falls under cosmetics.
Okay.
They're very heavily regulated down here, even
Okay.
as a cottage industry item. So how are you selling them?
Well,
Especially to retail outlets. I'd like to know that.
what do you mean, how am I
Are
selling?
you selling them? How do you, as a distributor or a wholesaler, be allowed to sell those to the mom and pop boutiques and stuff like that? Are you listed as a distributor?
He
Well,
wants to know if in your state, if it's classified as a cosmetic, I think.
no,
No.
I don't think so.
We can't do that here.
Yeah.
We can't do that here. Not as anything other than even a small time, maybe out our front door. But we try to sell that to a mom and pop boutique without a distributor license.
Is it because of certain ingredients that you have in it? Because you're talking
No, it's
like,
how it's regulated. It's how it's
It's just how
regulated.
it's
Lip
regulated.
balm, hand lotions, things like that are all considered cosmetics.
no, I mean, I went through this extensively with people out there. It was never anything that was an issue. So, didn't really
The
have
laws
any.
are very different here on that.
Yeah. So pollen is another product that you can sell, although I'm very careful with pollen just because of people's allergic reactions. I don't really think that that's an easy product to sell because some people just overuse it. They can have anaphylactic shock. It's not something that I really liked to sell very regularly, and if I did, it was almost like person to person. I never sold pollen through shops because I didn't understand who the end buyer was, what their complications could be, and what their kind of levels for pollen intake could be. So, pollen, especially when it's fresh and it's local, it can really affect you quite well. So, some other things are hive management. So, obviously there's lots of hotels getting into hive management. So I had 3 places, the Fairmont, the Hyatt, and the Waldorf Astoria out in Arizona, that wanted to use the honey in their spa treatments and their culinary creations. A lot of this has to do with media coverage. Obviously they want to do well for the environment, but they also want to get some really cool, unique media coverage. So the Waldorf Astoria, they put on a big honey festival. They had several, magazines come out. They got some really cool coverage when they did the, use the honey in their culinary creations, certain things like that. So you kind of want to cater to whatever they're looking for. They're not just doing this for the benefit of maybe the surrounding area. They want a little something out of it, and you want to be able to provide that. So those are just certain types of hotels. There are several hotels I said absolutely no to in that area because they had so many pools on the property, and the bees would have been all over those pools, and it just screamed, liability and upset customers right and left. So I said, as awesome as this would be, and this great rooftop location typically would work well in another part of the country, this is Arizona. There's Africanized bees everywhere. This is not going to work. So you have to be able to confidently say yes or no to some of these situations. Not everything is going to be a great fit, and that's okay. But you got to be okay with it at the end of the day. So I was happy to say no to several, and the one that was very, very strategically placed, the bees were out of the way from all the other customers. They were really hard to find, and they were almost camouflaged. That was a better situation. They weren't going to bother any of the customers or the clients, the membership that were going to the hotels. So I felt good about that. There's a science center that went in called the Butterfly Wonderland, where we did an indoor observation hive, an outside hive, and then we had 2 backup hives in the field. And that's because that science center was so excited about the bees. It's open 365 days out of the year. They never close, and the bees have to be in there every day. And so I got paid to monitor the inside hive, the outside hive, and then the field bees, 2 backup hives way out in the desert. So the second one of them went wrong, something went wrong with one of the indoor hives, the indoor observation hive. It had problems in the beginning quite a bit. We could pull that hive, give it a day break, pull another colony, put it in, and let that colony take over. So there's some weird things like that happen that I didn't expect, but was a nice little observation hive to take care of. The other thing is schools are really getting into observation hives. So the Whole Foods has a grant now. Not only do they have a great garden grant, which I've applied for and gotten, and that's a really good grant, $2,500 towards a garden for a school. The Beehive grant had its pilot program 2 years ago, and I was able to get the Beehive grant for a school. Although I had to talk to them and state that this particular school would not do well with an outdoor hive. How about we do an indoor observation hive where the kids can actually see what's going on, and there's a better chance for me to regulate this hive, keep it European, not let it get Africanized, and it's something that's already being done in the area. So you should look into that if you're at all interested. It's I think $1,500 for a Beehive grant, and they basically help you fund the hive, and then there could be continual grants as well. So that's another kind of fun thing. So this was Waldorf Astoria. This was when I first put hives out there. They wanted this really picturesque scene. So you can imagine how far out this one hive was by these beautiful rocks, but like quite a trek to get to this one little hive. And so eventually I relocated this hive closer to another area because it was just up and down these crazy little hills, and the fire ants were so bad. So this was just kind of an example of, they thought this would look great for some of the media coverage, but it was not easy for us to maintain. So this is the Butterfly Wonderland. Those are my kids. So this is when this indoor observation hive opened. So do you see what the problem is with this particular indoor observation hive? The company that built it so it could host at least 2 full colonies, if not 3, but only have 1 shared exit, entrance and exit. So, because the management was so excited about bees on every side of this thing, and they had already paid a lot of money for it, it was already practically installed when I got pulled on board, I said, we can try this. But this is really not how bees work. If you had separate entrances for all of them, it might go okay outside of the building. But for them to all share 1 tube to come in and out of this building on the north side, no less, this is going to be tricky. So they didn't have any sunshine in the morning, because it's facing north. And then they had to share this exit and entrance. So this colony collapsed so many times, and I was pulling new colonies quite often, that we reconfigured the whole thing, and then we just went to 1 colony in the middle, and I stocked the sides with capped honey, or what looked like capped honey and different frames, just to keep it picturesque for them, so it didn't look completely empty. So it was either a poster of information or it was some capped frames, because there was no way that we were going to get more than 1 colony to survive very easily. So this is the school hive. Oops. School hive, so that's just a good example of the school hive that you can put in. That I think is made. That was a really good type of hive that actually moves. I should stop touching this. That actually moves, I think 300, it spins around. I like that type of style. And it was easy to maintain, and it was wonderful for the school. So obviously you guys can do bee removals. I know you have bees around here.
No,
So.
no, they're very rare.
Hmm.
No bees here.
So, bee removals, you basically, you come up with your kind of a estimate. You can ask a lot of questions up front. I always had a series of questions I asked people, and then I would determine based on the difficulty, the location, maybe how established the hive was, what I was going to charge. Or I'd give a range because I said, well, if you can't answer these certain questions, I'm going to have to give you a range. I will keep it in the range, but this is because we have no idea how extensive this hive is. It could be a swarm that just went into this irrigation box in the ground, or it could have been there for 3 months, and it's going to take a little while to relocate. So I was always very upfront with them, but I would give a range, and that would kind of cover me in case it took a lot longer, or they weren't always truthful. Maybe they did know the bees were there for 6 years. They're not going to tell me that. So that was always kind of the case. So I had 2 different types of bee vacuums I would use, and you can do that or set up a nucleus colony nearby. Everybody has their techniques. I always had plenty of extra equipment in case, sometimes I'd be doing one swarm removal, get called and have another one on the way home. I could grab them both and then hit the bee yard and relocate them. So it was always tough. I always wanted to get new queens as quickly as I could because of the feral colonies and the Africanized bees I had to deal with. And that's really tricky because obviously the queens go to commercial beekeepers so many months out of the year, and it's really hard to get 12, queens, fresh European queens, for my purposes. So I would try and do that when I could, but it wasn't always easy. So, and a couple times, I had friends in the media that wanted to do live bee removals with me, photograph, how it went, and that's great. I always just tried to make sure that if we were going to do a live bee removal together, that I had already check these bees. They weren't going to be vicious. They weren't going to be, the most aggressive bees ever that you're going to see on TV with the TV interviewer. And so I would find kind of the really great cases where we could do this bee removal together and show people what type of work people do all over the country doing these live bee removals and why it's such a great way to, give these bees a second chance and how easy it can be. You want to show them the positive side of bees and relocation and how you're going to do this and why you care, all of which you can be talking about when you do your interview, but you don't really want to show them like the most, Africanized bees as you're doing this. So, and the other thing that people do always is, you can sell nucleus colonies, raise your queens, and even sell your equipment if you're into it. So I was always hesitant to sell nucleus colonies in Arizona to a lot of new beekeepers because I saw it happen too many times where new beekeepers in that particular area would not be able to check the bees regularly enough. They would become Africanized very quickly, and they would live in a suburban type of area, and all of a sudden, their bees are erupting. All the dogs in the neighborhood that are dark in color are getting attacked. Kids are at their pool getting, having bad situations. That was never really something I wanted to help promote. I had people that, if they had been to all my classes and they really, really were into bees and they wanted to, mentor with me for a little bit, and they had found land somewhere else away from people and secured a spot, that was different. But for people that hadn't really, if you asked them a couple questions, they hadn't picked up a book, they didn't know anything about bees yet, that to me wasn't a good sign that they were caring enough to, take on a nucleus colony of bees, a swarm of bees, and be able to care for them in a very positive way and keep that positive image in the beekeeping world that we want to always have. So I think you can have really good success in other areas where the bees typically are fairly gentle. So this is just some bee removals that I was doing. There's my little box, my bee removal, swarm removal vacuum that I would use, and it always had AZ Queen Bee on it. This is just a cardboard box in somebody's shed. So grills were pretty bad in Arizona. Grills would get filled with beehives, just that little hole on the side. Compost bins were great. They were always getting inundated. Gosh, and the irrigation boxes, I know you guys have those too. And then we always had beautiful wild, colonies just right in the trees, which I'm sure you have bees living year round here too. So very similar. similar climates, similar situations. This was just a building that they worked around the clock getting this building built. And so when they had swarms, they would call me, I would drop everything, and they knew I would because they knew I was gonna take care of these bees. So this was like a 30-foot high lift. They would pop me up there, I'd get the bees off the scaffolding, trucks were coming, you know, underneath, right and left, because work could not stop. And I would remove the bees and take them away and let them get back to work. But you know, you do have some clients like that where you know that they're gonna pay more because they need you there in 5 minutes. So you just kind of drop everything and do that. So school presentations, I specifically concentrate on typically second grade classrooms if I'm going to do a school presentation. That is the curriculum that ties in butterflies, the life cycle, and they talk about bees. But you can do a lot of presentations just to second grade on bees. Schools are happy to pay you to do this. So so I would take the observation hive, I would give a school presentation, I would have the kids do a bee dance, have special music we play, they do a bee dance. If the teachers wanted the kids to have a craft, we would do a rolled beeswax candle that they then got to take home. And the presentation is usually 45 minutes to an hour long. And sometimes I keep it really, really tight, only like 30 kids per classroom because I want them to have the best experience. I want them to be able to see the observation hive up close. I want them to be able to smell the beeswax. I want them to be able to taste a little honey. And if it's too big of a group, you can't do all that. You know, the kids get antsy, you know, they can't see the bees. So I always try to keep the presentation small. And if each second grade classroom wants a presentation, well then you just move from one classroom to another, or you set up in the library or a big room and you have the classes switch so that they all come in 30 at a time and they come to you and you're all set and prepped and ready for them, and then they can do all those things. So sometimes I make it a choice. We can do a big group, then you can't do this, this, and this. Or we can do smaller groups, it's gonna be a little bit more money, but then they're gonna see this, they're gonna see the queen bee, they're gonna taste the honey, they're gonna have their craft. You can kind of make that enticing, and schools seem to really love that. So I love partnerships, and I think that's one of the really fun things you can do when you have a little business. Other businesses love to partner with you, promote you, cross-promote. So some of the things that I was able to do in the past, the first year I partnered with somebody in September, National Honey Month, and we did a bees and beer event. So this was a local microbrew that I love, and I said, how about we partner and do a honey IPA? And they were like, oh my God, that sounds great. So I said, how much honey do you need? And you know, how big can we make this? So, and they were a small microbrewer, so they were like, okay, how about we'll do like 60 pounds of honey, I think it was 60 pounds of honey, and then we're gonna do these types of hops, and we're gonna make it a double honey IPA. So we planned for it, so we started this maybe in July, and because you wanna give a little bit of lead time. And then they got in all of these different types of hops. It was like Cascade and citrus and different things. I went to the facility and we brewed it together. We poured the honey in together, gave me the hops, everything went in together, and then we kind of watched the process. It was 2 weeks for this, and then 2 weeks in the cooler, and then they told me it was ready. I went over, we had a taste, it was excellent. So then we planned this bees and beer event. So he promoted it and I promoted it, and we had, I think I have a picture of it, let me see. Oh, there it is. So this was the brewery, and they had a ton of people show up. I mean, it was like people were so excited for this novel beer that this microbrew had never done before, and it was very, the honey made it a little bit more alcoholic. 8.2% is pretty high, so they were really excited about this. So, so they had growlers of it, and I had all my friends blasted on this, everybody was there, and growlers just were going out the door. So they sold out immediately that night, and it was a great event, but they were really happy because I think we picked like a random Wednesday night, not their heaviest night. I didn't want to take a Friday or Saturday from them by any means, but it was slammed. It looked like, you know, it was the weekend and it was a big deal. So it was just kind of fun that they had a lot of fun with it, and then I had a beehive there, and you know, people had a good time. But so the other one that I liked was we have this Sweet Republic, really well-known ice cream place in Scottsdale, and that's another like really artisanal, like single owner person who's just, I mean, she has won so many awards for her ice cream, and I didn't even know if she'd partner with me because she's just so incredible, and all these crazy flavors she comes up with. But I said, National Honey Month is coming up, any chance you'd want to do this honey ice cream, and we can, just to celebrate the honeybees, and and just have something new. And she was all over it. So she took the honey and she made it was like a plum lavender honey ice cream. I think that's what it was. Plum honey ice cream. But it was delicious. It was a combination I would have never thought of, and she did really well with it, and people loved it. So I had bees at the ice cream shop. People came in, they all tried it, and then I had honey jars for sale there. So some of the other ones I've done in the past were, I partnered with a tea house. So cute little tea houses, they love tea and honey. They'll have you do a presentation, and they make it like almost like an event where you could have like, here we're gonna have this high tea with beekeeper type of event, and people love that. It was a little ticketed event, very cute. Whole Foods always has pollinator events. So I don't know if anybody else has gotten called to do this, but I would go in there for their pollinator event, and so many hours, certain Saturday for the pollinator event in my town, I would go to the local Whole Foods, and they would have their whole section, all bees everywhere, because they're really good about promoting bees. And then, I would just have the live bees there, educate the public, and I don't have honey I don't have honey there, but it's just the idea that, they're helping the honeybees and the beekeeping industry by educating. I can certainly be there for a few hours and give some honey samples and teach people about bees and why our food supply is that connected. So I do think that that's a great event to get into. People have pollinator parties. Cheese and honey events are really big now. People are really getting into cheese and honey. And obviously CSAs. So your farmers markets are great, but then you have a lot of people that don't have the time to go to farmers markets, and they order their fruits and vegetables, and they always have additions. So like in my town, you can add this is September's National Honey Month. Do you want to add honey to your basket? Well, a lot of people are going to do that because they're like, oh my God, fresh local honey, let's add that to the basket. So you can make these little arrangements with people where you're the exclusive provider to that CSA for that month, and it's just your honey, it's this type of wildflower or this blend, and people can opt to have it added to their basket. And so you're not really inconvenienced too much. You can get your pre-orders and you can drop it off and let them distribute it. So
What's CSA? We don't
Community supported agriculture.
yeah, community supported agriculture. So, and I should have explained that. So CSAs are kind of like that, it's the little farms that just have people who pay in for a share of their fruits and vegetables. A lot of times they have a waiting list, or they might have, 500 people. That's all the shares they can provide. Those 500 people get a cut of all their fruits and vegetables. People don't know what they're getting. It's whatever they have that month. And then they have these additional add-ons. So some people get them a basket for $20, $30, $50 to $80. It could be as big as they want. Customizable.
It's big here, that's why.
Oh, it's not as big here? Okay. They're huge in Maryland. I swear people are crazy about these CSAs. But, and you get them delivered right to your door, or there's a big event at the local park. Everybody goes at 8 a.m. to the local park, where they pick up their big basket of, it's like literally a big basket of fruits and vegetables. So I think it's really great, but they're always looking for cool additional items. And honey is that cool additional item that if it's seasonal and it's just once in a while, people will eat it up and they'll love it. Plus, it's your community. You want them to have your honey. That's great. They're going to pay a little bit for your honey because it's local. So in holidays, I swear you can really partner with a lot of cool people. I had partnered with a winery, and so they do a bunch of wine baskets as corporate gifts. So then they wanted to make it easy, they wanted local nuts and local honey and the wine and like one other thing. So I got pulled into that. So I sold a ton of honey at the holidays, and I didn't have to do anything. I literally dropped off like cases of honey, ready to go, bottled nicely and packaged nicely, and they did the rest of the work. And that's just an easy way to do it. Obviously, gift baskets are really fun too, and I do that too, but these are just other options for you. And then, let me see here. So bottom line, I kind of think if you diversify, you can kind of drive demand, increase your business, and increase your income. So a lot of people might have one revenue stream at one time of the year, but you don't want to kind of think that way because that might not always be there. And there's so much other aspects to the year and other things that you could be doing, or spring clean in. So, the whole time I'm doing bee removals, I'm thinking, well, school presentation season is coming up, but I don't always have to do school presentations in the spring. I could be moving some of those to the fall. And, I'm gonna be doing, I sell my products in July, at this big home and landscape show, and then I sell them again right before the holidays, because that's when the best driver is. People love holiday gifts, and I cater to that holiday crowd, and so I'm not kind of doing it all year round. I'm picking like 2 times of the year where I can maximize it, and then I'm wholesaling in between, so I'm not, kind of running around. I don't do a whole lot of online stuff because I never had time for that. Some people do great with online, and that's wonderful. You could have packages going out every day if you have a great website and you're driving business. Not something I was good at, nor did I really want to do, but I do think you can do that as well. So I think some of the things, you just be ready. You never know what's going to come your way, and you don't know until you try. So you can just put yourself out there, try a few things if you're ready and you want to. If you can seek some media opportunities, you can do great, and you don't even have to say a whole lot. You can let the bees do the talking and your products and just make everything look pretty, and you can get some great media. You could start with radio interviews. Those are really easy, and I've done a lot of those, and it's not nearly as stressful or as a TV interview. And people love to talk about the bees during swarm season, National Honey Month, and you can always partner with somebody, diversify your products in your business, and if you can wholesale honey, small jars, for higher prices to some really, really, trendy places. You guys are in a trendy place. Like, this is a great market, I think. And, you can get into some of these resorts, and you could, do some different things with your products, and I think that it would be well received. So, so hopefully you could sell your honey faster and at higher prices, and, make your honey work for you a little bit more. So, I'm going to have to try this all again because I'm in a whole new venue now, and I am up against a lot of competition in Maryland, but, I'm going to go to some of those cities nearby where there's more people. There's Annapolis, there's DC, there's Baltimore. There's going to be some different venues there that I'll have to try and get into. And, maybe I won't be as high priced as I was in Arizona, but I won't know that until I try and get my products out there and see what the situation lends itself. So before I close, I want to get to questions. I want to talk a little bit about the American Beekeeping Federation. So the big 75th anniversary is coming up. This convention is awesome, and it's every year in January in a different city. So this year it's going to be in Reno in January, Reno, Nevada, January 9th through the 13th. And ABF is great. They are the largest beekeeping association in the United States. They kind of cater to the needs of everybody. So small scale is represented at the convention, sideliners, but obviously there's a lot of commercial beekeepers there too, which I think is fun because commercial beekeepers are, experiencing so many different things than we do, and we can learn so much from them and what they do. It's not exactly something that, I think I'm ever going to do, but I like to see what other people are doing in the industry. And there's lots of sideliners there talking about what they get into. They go to the EPA, USDA, and the FDA, and they lobby all the time. There's so many issues happening right now with just the definition of honey and what is found in honey these days, that there's so much going on behind the scenes. And this, I feel like the industry and the American Beekeeping Federation is putting a lot of time and money into making sure that we come out of this in a positive light, because FDA is changing things pretty rapidly and trying to define things, and all of that is new to the industry, and we want to make sure it's better for the beekeepers and not worse. So that's just a little picture of my sweet family. But yeah, that's basically it. I have some of these great little conference information pamphlets on Reno and the ABF. They do webinars. If you join, you can get access to hundreds of webinars that are just amazing, chock full of information from some of the top people all over the United States. It's a really, really great type of membership, and I've learned a lot through it. So I think it's just something you should think about and consider. And then I think the following year it's going to be in Myrtle Beach. So if you don't make it to Reno, Myrtle Beach isn't that far, and that would be a great convention. I think that's going to be so fun. So keep that in mind. January every year, different part of the country. And there's at least 1,200 beekeepers I think that typically attend. It's pretty fun. A lot going on. So who has a great question that I can answer for you? Yes?
There's a slide you have up there with the apiary. There's a plant behind. I want to know what the name of the plant is. It's a flower.
Plant. There was a Mexican bird of paradise.
I don't
think.
think that's what it was.
And there was a prickly pear cactus.
There it is.
There it is.
Which one?
Huh?
This one right here.
Oh. And
I thought that was the Mexican. I think it's called the Mexican bird of paradise.
Yeah.
Mexican bird of paradise. I mean, that's not like obviously the scientific name or anything, but that's kind of the common name in Arizona. Anybody else think they know?
I could take a royal poinsettia.
yeah, it looks like a dwarf. Is it a tree or a bush?
It's more of a shrub. This one just grew up on the fence and grew a little higher than it usually does. It's very pretty.
Firecracker plant.
Yeah. So it was always kind of lovely. I liked having those in the pictures because it was really.
Barbados, Jared?
Yes.
So when one of the bee colleges I attended, they were talking about in Miami they have a lot more Africanized bees. We have some here, but they were talking about the difficulty of requeening them with Europeans because they're frequently killed.
Right.
Did you have that issue also?
So I did try and requeen quite a few of the Africanized colonies, and I would typically have to break them down into really small nucleus colonies and separate them. Sometimes, because they would grow so rapidly. So I would try and separate them, break them down, so I didn't have 60,000 Africanized bees, and here I am trying to replace the queen. So I would break them down, smaller nucleus colonies, and then try, obviously get rid of the queen. And I would requeen them, but I would keep that queen caged for a long time, longer than a typical setup. Because they would attack her and kill her immediately, and even a couple days with her pheromones was never enough. They needed more time.
What they were saying in the bee college down in Davie that we had was that they would go ahead and let them make queen cells and they'd destroy all those, and then they had like a little 4x4 that they would put over empty
The metal push cage. Mhm.
cushion, yeah.
Yeah, because then she could have more room and
And
but she
start
would be
making
protected.
eggs. Right,
Right. I think that's a better way to do it for sure.
yeah.
But it's not easy, and so I had to maintain a lot of European colonies for the school and for the backup hives for the Butterfly Wonderland. So I would literally be in those hives, every few days, making sure that they weren't going to swarm, they weren't going to requeen, and that my queen was in there, and that they were still European. I felt like it was a lot of maintenance to keep bees European in that area. If I took a week or two off, they looked like they were going to produce a new queen. That queen guaranteed to be Africanized. Any queen in that area was going to mate with the Africanized drones, and she would for sure be laying Africanized, eggs. So it was just it was a tough environment, and I just felt like if you wanted your bees to stay European, you had to be in there all the time, making sure that they were still a nice, gentle European colony. And so that was hard for a lot of hobbyists who had never done it before. I was lucky I had the experience growing up in Pennsylvania with nice, gentle European honeybees. And then, I could adapt a little bit to Arizona's environment. But for new people who had never done it, it was, that's a big learning curve. You're kind of like, you're not used to being in there every week. You don't even know what you're looking for. And then you miss the window, and now all of a sudden they're overtaken by Africanized honeybees, or your queen is now Africanized, and they don't even know how to find her to get rid of her. It was just, it's a very, that's a very tough environment to, therefore, when I said about your club, we only had one tiny little club in my area, no state organization whatsoever, And so there wasn't even a lot of support for a lot of local people that wanted to try and get into it. And half the people that wanted to try and get into it, everybody else was scared to take them out because, it's, here you are, you're gonna be liable for this person if they're in your bee yard and they get hurt and they get stung and, they don't have the right suit. So I felt like it was a tough environment for people to start beekeeping versus here you have great clubs, you have a state organization, you have tons of resources, you have workshops, short courses. That was not the case there. So I felt bad for people who were trying to really get into the industry. It's just they didn't have the resources that make it easier to learn.